Welcome to the very first lesson of this series I'm going to be creating to help students achieve their goal of fluency in Spanish. We're going to start with the very basic stuff first, and then going up to the intermediate and then the advanced in different videos. So, thank you for being here, and let's start. Okay, so the very first thing you need to know is that these classes are going to be following the book Complete Spanish Grammar by Practice Makes Perfect. I like this book because it goes little by little with the topics. Okay, so on today's first class, we're going to be seeing the present tense. It is going to be only the regular conjugations and a little bit of the usage of the present tense. And we're going to leave the irregular conjugations and a little bit more advanced stuff from the present tense for other videos. But as for today, it's only going to be regular conjugations. So if you are new to Spanish, this is the video you need to see. Okay, so regular verbs. What are regular verbs? In Spanish, you have three kind of verbs. It's only going to be three kind of verbs. We have the first one, comprar, which is to buy. The second one is vender, to sell. And the third one, vivir, to live. Okay, so in Spanish, different from English, Spanish has three categories of verbs. Each category is differentiated by the ending of the verb. So we have categories from AR verbs, ER verbs, or IR verbs. The very first thing you need to remember. All verbs in Spanish fit into one of these three categories. There are not more categories, there's only three that fit here. Now, many people say that when it comes to conjugation, Spanish is so hard, but it's not. It's actually super simple. Probably, probably you just haven't seen the right approach. So here is mine. In Spanish, you need to realize that once you know what category the verb belongs to, you need to get rid of that ending. And therefore, you will have just the stem part of the verb. So if you have comprar, you get rid of the AR, and there you have compr. Later, you will need the conjugation. Vender and vivir, same idea. Okay? Now, in English, you also have conjugations. It's just that people don't see it that way. Because in English, different from Spanish, conjugations are the same word, basically, right? So, for example, you have to buy, and you have I buy, you buy, he buy, or she buys. And it's only until you see he or she that you realize that is actually a conjugation. But the other verbs with I or you or they or we, it's the same, literally the same word. Now, if we actually want to see the conjugations, you have to think that the original verb to buy, it's orange, right? So it actually has the orange color. But when it conjugates to I, it becomes green. And with you, it becomes purple. And with he or she, it becomes orange. Now, it's not the same, right? It was not the same as the one above. Now you have different colors. Well, English, unfortunately, it has the same letters, but in Spanish, you don't. Okay? So, conjugations in Spanish give away who's doing the action. Let's see. In English, when you have a normal sentence, like I buy a car, you need the subject. In English, English has this mandatory rule that you need to have this part, this I, there in the sentence. If you have the same sentence without the I part, you don't really know who's doing the action, right? It could be I, or it could be you, or it could be we, even they, right? Obviously, it cannot be he or she, or even it, because it doesn't have an S. But even if we put here buys, we wouldn't know who's doing the action. English requires the subject. But in Spanish, if you have the same sentence, I buy a car, yo compro un auto, you notice that the verb is already conjugated. Originally, it was comprar. But then we get rid of the AR and put an O. Because in the yo form, the conjugation for the yo form, it's an O. So get rid of the AR and just put an O. Okay? The sentence then is yo compro un auto. But in Spanish, the yo concept, the concept of the subject is already embedded into the O from the conjugation. So if we get rid of the subject word and we just have compro un auto, we already know who's doing the action. It's not like we don't know. We know that is the yo form because in that tiny O, the meaning of yo is embedded. Okay? That's why in Spanish, subject pronouns are not necessarily that useful or needed in most sentences, at least in spoken Spanish. And if you are watching this video, it's because you want to speak Spanish. Okay? Now, when it comes to subject pronouns, these are all the subject pronouns that Spanish has, except for two, but I will explain you which ones. Now you have the yo, which you already know it's I form. You have the tú, the you form, and then you have usted, the you form. Now, wait a minute. We have two you forms. Now, many of you probably have heard that the usted form is the formal version of the form tú, and therefore the tú is the informal. And that's kind of confusing because should I use tú when I'm talking with my friends and usted when I'm talking with, I don't know, my boss? Well, yes and no. Let's put it in simple terms. The equivalent of the word tú is literally just you, right? The one that you normally use in daily conversations. Now, when you use usted, you will use it with a specific kind of people. You will use it when you address strangers, but clearly older than you. If they look older, then you use usted. But unless it's a stranger, you use it with bosses, doctors, teachers, or basically someone who has a status above you in the hierarchy of power, let's say. Now, also with strangers, but here is a cultural aspect. I am actually 34, 34. I'm actually 33, 34. Well, let's say 33. So I'm 33 years old. So I'm considered an adult. And when I'm addressing another adult that is clearly older than me, the very first time I address that person, I use usted. But that person is most likely going to reply, please do not use the usted form with me, use the tú form, because we are both adults. Then we have the same hierarchy, right? Usted is mostly used by kids, well behaved kids, right? When they address you on the street, when they ask for help, they will be using the step. So you will be using with doctors, even if the doctor is younger than you. They deserve respect in that sense. With teachers is the same, and with your boss is the same, even if your boss is younger than you. Okay, it's until he, she, or they decide to allow you use tú, or you switch to the you form, to the tú form. Now you have the él form, which is the he, and then the ella, the she form. Nosotros is the we form, and then you have ellos and ellas. We do have a difference between they, female, and they, masculine. Okay, so ellos with an O, masculine, ellas with an A, female. And ustedes. And here's where this word gets tricky. Many people say that ustedes is just the formal version of usted, but in reality, it is, but it also has another meaning. Ustedes in reality means you all, like you guys, you three, you. Okay? So when you talk to three or at least two or more people, that is the ustedes form. When you address to doctors, you use ustedes. When you address to kids at the same time, you use ustedes. So it's not the formal version, or should I say, it is, but it's also not the formal version. Okay. Now, when you have the conjugation, let's go back to our three verbs originally: comprar, vender, and vivir. Remember that you have three different endings: AR, ERs, and IR verbs. Okay. In the yo form, you're going to get rid of these letters and you're going to then add the conjugation, the letter O. The letter O is going to be for the three verbs, right? So you have then yo compro, yo compro, yo vendo, and yo vivo. Okay. Now, while we are at it, this letter, the letter V in English, is not really V in Spanish. In English, you have for V and B for B. But in Spanish, is all B's. So you don't pronounce the verb vivo, but vivo. Okay? That was extra. It was not planned to be said here, but now you have this pronunciation complete. Now, going to comprar. Comprar, it's an AR verb. And I always say that comprar or the AR verbs are always good friends. They are always nice verbs. Rarely do they are irregular. So when you have the yo form is yo compro. When you have the tu form is going to be tu compras. When you have the he, she, or you formal, let's stick to that explanation, is going to be compra. Okay? So far you have compras, AS, compra, 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 and A. With the nosotros form, is going to be compramos. And in this one, it's a little bit longer, the ending, but you still have an A. Okay? Keep in mind that one. And for the they masculine, the they female, and the you guys, remember like you all form, you have an AN. Now, if you haven't noticed it yet, you all have all the pronouns have an A. The reason for this one is because, well, you are in the column of the AR verbs, right? So all AR verbs are going to need an A, okay? Plus the obviously extra letters that you have here. Now, when you have the ER, what do you think you need? Well, you need E's instead of A's, but you keep the extra letters that you also have here. Now, you may think, well, if ARs have A's and ERs have E's, pretty obvious that IRs are going to have I's. Well, not so quickly here. In my classes, I always say ERs and IRs are twins, but not any particularly twin. They're evil twins. Okay? You know, twins are the same, they look alike. They're not completely the same because they think different things, but they look alike. Okay? So we're going to keep this idea here. If you have an ES from the ER verbs, then in the IR verbs, you're going to have an ES as well. Okay, for the two form. So tu vendes, you sell, tu vives, you live. Okay. This twin concept is going to carry on for the U formal the he and the she. But what happens to the we form? Well, in the we form, you no longer follow the twin idea because like I said, twins are the same, at least they look the same, but they are slightly different in a part. This is the part that they are slightly different. So you have vivimos, and now you have an I. AR verbs, amos, ER verbs, hemos, and IR verbs, imos. The rest of them, they, female, they, masculine, and you all, the same idea. It's twins. So you follow the same as the ER. Okay? Now, these concepts of conjugations are really helpful, but when it comes to speaking, it's pretty obvious that the Joe form, as you can see over here, the Joe form is always going to be an O. Okay? So when the to form, always going to be an S. And probably it's confusing because in English, the he or she is the one with the S. No, in Spanish, the you form is the one with the S. Now, I'm putting these colors on the column of the subject pronouns because it's super simple and kind of like a shortcut. If you only remember one of them, so let's say select L to learn, as long as you remember L, you know the conjugation from the other two. So it's not really necessary to do this whole papers of practicing of the stat form, the he form, or the eja form. No, just learn one, and the other two are going to be the same. What happens with nosotros? Nosotros is different, but the same happens for ellos, ellas, and ustedes. If you remember only ellos, then you know the conjugation for the other two. So in reality, as long as you remember only five, as long as you only remember the yo form, the tu form, the he form, or probably the she form, the nosotros and the ellos, well, then you're safe. With five, you can actually master the other ones. Okay, so conjugations are not that difficult. I mean, in the very first part, when you learn a language, memorization uh, plays a big role. In Spanish, as long as you remember these endings, you remember the twins, you remember the job form is the same, and you remember we form follows what category it belongs to, then that's it. You know how to conjugate. Now, what about vosotros and vos? You may be asking. Vosotros is normally used in Spain, and vos is normally used in Argentina. So, well, we don't really care about those ones, at least for these classes. So, if you're looking for conjugations of vosotros and vos, well, unfortunately, you will not find them here. So, you probably are safe if you remember the ones that I'm teaching. But if you really want to learn Spanish from Spain, then you will have to practice with other videos. Okay, sorry for that. Now, when do you use the Spanish? Well, not Spanish, but the present tense. It might be pretty obvious that you use it when you speak for the present tense. But what is the present tense usage? Now, it really has only four basic uses. It has a little bit more, but let's learn only these four by for now. Okay, as of now. So you have the first one, which is actions happening now. So you can say, for example, yo veo televisión. I see television. Now, I put the yo form between brackets because you can say the same sentence with only veo televisión, like we have said. You don't really need the subject. It's only the verb plus the objects because in the O form, you already have, like we said, the meaning of the subject. Okay. If I have another sentence, is habits and routines. Now, in when you have a routinary action, you normally have present tense. But in order to have a routine meaning, you normally need a frequency adverb. Here, the word normalmente could be translated as usually or normally. Uh, I eat breath. Once again, we can get rid of the yo form and it still has the same meaning. Normalmente, como pan. Normally, I eat bread. It's the same idea in English. The third one is future events. Now, be a little bit careful with this one. Future events, Spanish has the future tense, just like English has the future tense. But English tends to use a different structure for when you talk about future events using temporal phrases. Mañana is basically a temporal phrase. If you don't have mañana, which, well, mañana stands for tomorrow, tomorrow. If you didn't have the word mañana, this sentence, viajo a México, I travel to Mexico, would either mean a routine, but most likely an action happening now. If you have the word mañana, then that gives the idea of future. Therefore, the sentence means something like tomorrow I am traveling to Mexico. Tomorrow I will travel to Mexico. But remember, you do need the word mañana. Questions about opinions is the fourth usage. This is fairly simple. When you ask about the opinion of somebody else, you need the word in present tense. So here you have the question for the very first time. In Spanish, remember we have question marks from the opening ones. This is called the opening question mark, and this is the closing question mark. English only has one, but Spanish you need two. If you're writing on Facebook or if you're writing on a message or something, you can only write the last one and people will understand that it is a question. Why people will understand that? Because in Spanish, if we happen to get rid of these question marks, you're actually saying a statement. It's a statement. It's not a question anymore. Like you sell candy versus do you sell candy? So with the question marks, you need the question, you need to change the intonation, but without them, it's just a statement. Now, once again, we don't need the to because we have the es form, and the es stands for the u form, right? So we know that vender it's an er verb because it has an e. Okay. Now let's see some sentences so you can see a little bit more of the present tense. Yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. Now, in this one, we're only using the yo form. So that's why you have an O. Next one. Yo bebo cerveza. I drink beer. Really important word to know in Mexico, cerveza. Yo bebo cerveza. Drink in Spanish is the verb beber. Now, because it's the yo form, you get rid of these two and you put an O. Once more, in the verb, we have the subject. So I could actually say bebo cerveza and nothing really changes. Last one is yo trabajo en México, as in I work in Mexico. The yo is implied on the O, so I could have said trabajo en México. Let's see other phrases with different subjects. Tú corres en el parque. You run in the park. Now, once more, you could have said corres en el parque because the es implies the you form. Okay. The same happens with the next verb. The next verb is cocinamos, as in nosotros cocinamos carne. We cook meat. If we didn't say nosotros, it would be still understood that this is the we form because you have the the amos form in here. Now, in the last one, same idea. You have ellos escriben libros. If we didn't have ellos, you still have the en to give context. Now, here is a side note you need to realize. Every language, when you learn a language, you need context. Without context, you don't really know the real meaning of a sentence or even a word. So if we didn't have, let's focus on the word, on the sentence, ellos escriben libros. If we didn't have ellos and we just had escriben libros, we wouldn't really know the meaning of this sentence if it's basically just the sentence we are exposed to for the very first time. It could be ellos, it could be ellas, or it could be ustedes, that you all form. Remember? Now, if you had context, you would know that is the ellos form, or ellas, or ustedes. So let's put some context. Let's say that Mike and John are the ones who are writers. And you say, like, John and Mike are good writers. Escriben libros. All right, so in that case, we know that is two guys, so we would use ellos. But without context, we wouldn't know. That's why, without context, it's advisable to write the pronouns. So, without context, ellos escriben libros would be better. Now, let's have a tiny conversation here. Well, not that tiny, but you can see here the usage of the verb vender in more conjugations. I will say it once slowly and then one fast, and then we will have the translation. So there are two people speaking. Person A says, Buenos días. ¿Tú trabajas aquí? Sí, yo trabajo aquí. ¿Vendes tequila? No, no vendo tequila. ¿Vendes cerveza? No, no vendo cerveza. ¿Qué cosa vendes? No vendo alcohol. Esto es una dulcería. ¿Vendes dulces con alcohol? Okay, let's say it one more time, but now faster. Buenos días. ¿Tú trabajas aquí? Sí, yo trabajo aquí. ¿Vendes tequila? No, no vendo tequila. ¿Vendes cerveza? No, no vendo cerveza. ¿Qué cosa vendes? No vendo alcohol. Esto es una dulcería. ¿Vendes dulces con alcohol? So probably a person looking for a lot of alcohol, even in candies. So let's see the translation. Buenos días. ¿Tú trabajas aquí? Good morning. Do you work here? Now, in this very first sentence, you need to realize that in Spanish, we do not have the auxiliary verbs do or does. They do not exist at all, right? So, how do you make questions? You just take the statement into a different intonation, add the question marks, and there you have. So, instead of saying, do you work here? Literally in Spanish, you say something like, you work here? So, just make the intonation different. Sí, yo trabajo aquí. Yes, I work here. ¿Vendes tequila? Do you sell tequila? Now, notice that in this question, once again, we're not putting the pronoun tú. We're actually dropping it from the Spanish sentence. Vendes tequila. The person could have said, tú vendes tequila, but it's not really necessary. You just omit it because you have the es. In English, though, you do need it. So you do need to have the do and you do need to have the you. But in Spanish, literally, would be just like sell tequila. Do you sell tequila? No, no vendo tequila. No, I don't sell tequila. ¿Vendes cerveza? Do you sell beer? No, no vendo cerveza. No, I don't sell beer. ¿Qué cosa vendes? What thing do you sell? No vendo alcohol. Esto es una dulcería. I don't sell alcohol. This is a candy shop. Well, probably was not going to be a period here. And last one, ¿vendes dulces con alcohol? Do you sell candies with alcohol? So as you can see here, the do auxiliary is not needed and the pronoun is omitted when possible. Okay, let's practice. Okay. Now you have these sentences here. Probably you can answer on the comments below to complete these sentences. With speak, you have the verb hablar. So she speaks in English would be something something en inglés. We walk 3 miles every day. So here you have the verb caminar. So something something 3 millas cada día. You all, remember it, you need the pronoun you all in order to conjugate in the you all form. If you don't remember the you all form, probably you learn it with the they female or they masculine form. So write, escribir. So you all write cartas cada noche. And last one, he works in the bank. So work is trabajar. Don't confuse the S from English, right? In Spanish, the he or she forms do not have an S. Keep that in mind. So he works in el banco. Try to write those sentences below. I will be answering and checking some of them for the very first people that write them. And that's it. That's all for today's video. Thank you for joining us today. Uh, as you can see here, it says dale me gusta al video. Hit the thumbs up, the like button on the video, and suscríbete por favor. Subscribe, please, if you want to keep watching these videos or if you think they are useful. And if you don't, well, don't subscribe, just watch them regularly. But if you do want to support the channel, subscribe.